toddler saw a German shepherd sitting motionless in a phone booth. What she did next brought everyone to tears. What happened next will shock you to your core. The story you're about to listen to will change how you see the world forever. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment below where you're watching from. The rain hit the pavement like bullets that afternoon, turning the quiet streets of Willowbrook into rivers of muddy water. 5-year-old Emma pressed her small nose against the car window, watching the drops race down the glass. Her mother, Sarah, gripped the steering wheel tighter, squinting through the windshield wipers that squeaked with every stroke. "Mommy, why is it raining so hard?" Emma asked, her breath fogging up the window. "Sometimes the sky just needs to cry, sweetheart," Sarah replied, turning down Oak Street toward their small apartment. The old phone booth on the corner caught her eye, a relic from decades past that the town had never bothered to remove. Its glass panels were cracked, and weeds grew around its base like forgotten memories. Emma suddenly sat up straight, her eyes wide. "Mommy, stop the car!" "What's wrong, honey?" Sarah slowed down, confused by the urgency in her daughter's voice. "There's something in the phone booth. Something's wrong." Emma's voice trembled, and she pressed both hands against the window. "Please, Mommy, we have to go back." Sarah looked in her rearview mirror at the old booth. Through the rain and cracked glass, she could barely make out a dark shape inside. "Emma, it's probably just trash or—" "No." Emma's cry was so sharp, it made Sarah's heart skip. "It's not trash, it's alive, and it's scared." Against her better judgment, Sarah pulled over and parked. The rain drummed on the roof of their car like an angry crowd. "Stay here while I check," she said, but Emma was already unbuckling her seatbelt. "I'm coming with you. He needs me." "He?" Sarah grabbed an umbrella from the back seat, her maternal instincts on high alert. "Emma, what do you mean he?" Emma didn't answer. She was already pushing open the car door, letting the rain soak her yellow raincoat. Sarah hurried after her, holding the umbrella over both of them as they approached the phone booth. The closer they got, the clearer the shape became. Inside the booth, sitting perfectly still like a statue, was a German shepherd. The dog's dark eyes stared straight ahead, unblinking, as if he were waiting for a phone call that would never come. "Oh my God," Sarah whispered, her hand finding Emma's shoulder. "How long has he been in there?" Emma broke free from her mother's grip and walked right up to the glass door. The dog didn't move, didn't even seem to notice them. Emma placed her tiny palm against the cracked glass, and that's when Sarah saw it, tears streaming down her daughter's face. "He's saying goodbye," Emma sobbed. "He's saying goodbye to someone who's never coming back." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. That had nothing to do with the rain. "Emma, how do you know that?" "He told me." Emma's voice was barely a whisper. "He's been waiting so long, Mommy, so long that he forgot how to move." The German shepherd was enormous, probably weighing close to 80 pounds, with thick black and tan fur that was matted and dirty. His ears were alert, but his body remained motionless, as if he were a guard dog programmed to never leave his post. Sarah tried the door handle. It was unlocked. The hinges creaked as she pulled it open, expecting the dog to bolt or bark or show some sign of life. Instead, he simply turned his head slightly to look at them, and Sarah gasped. The dog's eyes were the most human thing she'd ever seen. They held a depth of sadness that made her chest ache. No animal should look like that, she thought. No living thing should carry that much pain. "Hello, boy," Sarah said softly, crouching down. "Are you okay? Are you hurt?" The dog's gaze shifted to Emma, and something changed. His tail gave the faintest wag, and he tilted his head as if listening to something only he could hear. Emma stepped into the booth, ignoring her mother's protests. "It's okay," she whispered to the dog. "I know you're tired. I know you've been waiting." The dog's breathing grew heavier, and Sarah noticed something that made her stomach turn. The animal was severely underweight, his ribs visible through his dull coat. Fresh scratches marked his muzzle, and his paws were worn raw, as if he'd been digging or trying to escape from somewhere. "Mommy, can we take him home?" Emma asked, still staring into the dog's eyes. "He doesn't have anywhere else to go." Sarah's first instinct was to say no. They lived in a tiny apartment, barely making ends meet on her salary as a nurse. A dog this size would be expensive, and they had no idea if he was dangerous or sick or belonged to someone else. But then the dog did something that changed everything. He stood up slowly, his legs shaking from sitting in the same position for who knows how long, and walked over to Emma. He lowered his massive head and gently pressed it against her chest, as if he were giving her a hug. Emma wrapped her small arms around his neck, and the dog's eyes closed for the first time since they'd found him. "His name is Max," she said simply. "He told me." Sarah felt tears prick her own eyes. "Emma, dogs don't tell people their names. This one does." Emma looked up at her mother with a seriousness that seemed far too old for her 5-year-old face. "He's special, Mommy. He's been through something terrible, and he needs us." The rain began to ease, and Sarah found herself making a decision that would change all of their lives. "Okay," she said, surprising herself, "but we need to take him to a vet first. And if he belongs to someone else—" "He doesn't," Emma interrupted, still holding the dog. "The people who had him before weren't very nice. They hurt him." Sarah's blood ran cold. "Emma, what do you mean? How do you know that?" Emma's expression grew distant, as if she were seeing something far away. "I can see it sometimes. When I touch animals, I can see their memories. Max was in a dark place with other dogs, and there were people in white coats who did bad things to them." The dog, Max, lifted his head and looked directly at Sarah. In that moment, she understood that her daughter wasn't making this up. There was something about this animal, something that went beyond normal understanding. "All right," Sarah said, her voice shaking. "Let's get him to the car." But as they prepared to leave the phone booth, Max suddenly stiffened. His ears perked up, and he growled low in his throat, looking down the street. Sarah followed his gaze and saw a black sedan parked about a block away, its windows tinted so dark she couldn't see inside. "What is it, boy?" she asked, but Max was already moving, placing himself between Emma and the street. Emma's hand found the dog's head, and she closed her eyes. When she opened them again, her face was pale. "They're looking for him," she whispered. "The bad people are looking for him." Sarah felt her heart racing. "Emma, what are you talking about?" "We need to go home now," Emma said, her voice urgent. "Max says they've been driving around all day, checking all the places where lost dogs might hide." Sarah looked back at the black sedan. Even from a distance, she could feel eyes watching them. "Come on," she said, scooping Emma up in one arm. "Max, come with us, now." The dog followed them to the car, his movements careful and deliberate. As Sarah fumbled with the keys, she glanced back at the sedan. It was still there, but now she could see the silhouette of someone in the driver's seat talking on a phone. They drove home in silence, Max sitting in the back seat with Emma's hand resting on his head. Sarah kept checking her rearview mirror, but the black sedan never followed them. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that their quiet life in Willowbrook was about to become very complicated. That night, after giving Max some leftover chicken and a bowl of water, Sarah tried to process what had happened. She'd always known Emma was sensitive, especially around animals. But this was different. This was like Emma could actually communicate with them. "Mommy," Emma said from her bed, where Max had curled up beside her, despite Sarah's protests about the dog sleeping on the furniture. "Max isn't just a regular dog." "What do you mean, sweetheart?" "He used to be different. Before the bad people took him, he was smarter. They did something to his brain." Emma's voice was matter-of-fact, as if she were discussing the weather. "He remembers things that dogs aren't supposed to remember." Sarah sat on the edge of the bed, studying Max's face. In the lamplight, his eyes seemed even more human than they had in the phone booth. "Emma, you know we have to find out if he belongs to someone, right? What if his family is looking for him?" "His family died," Emma said quietly. "That's why he was in the phone booth. He was waiting for his boy to call him home, but his boy can't call anymore." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. "Oh, honey, how do you know all this?" "Max shows me pictures in my head. His boy was named Jake, and he was a soldier. Jake taught Max how to find people who were hurt, how to protect them. But then Jake went away to war and never came back." Sarah felt tears streaming down her face. "So Max has been waiting for Jake to come home?" "For 3 years," Emma whispered. "Every day he would go to places where Jake might call. The phone booth was the last place." Max lifted his head and looked at Sarah with those impossibly sad eyes. In that moment, she understood that this wasn't just about rescuing a stray dog. This was about healing a broken heart that had been waiting for closure for far too long. "We'll take care of you," Sarah promised, reaching out to pet Max's head. "You don't have to wait anymore." But even as she said the words, Sarah couldn't shake the image of that black sedan. Emma was right. Someone was looking for Max, and something told her that whoever they weren't the kind of people who would just give up and go home. As the rain continued to fall outside their window, Sarah made a decision that would put her family in danger. She was going to keep Max no matter what it cost them. Because sometimes doing the right thing meant taking a risk you couldn't afford to take. She had no idea that by morning, their lives would be turned upside down in ways she never could have imagined. The phone booth had been just the beginning. That night, Emma couldn't sleep. She tossed and turned in her small bed, her mind filled with images that weren't her own. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw flashes of concrete walls, metal cages, and men in white coats holding needles. She could hear barking, whimpering, and sounds that made her stomach hurt. Max lay beside her, his breathing steady, but his body tense. Even in sleep, he seemed to be guarding her, ready to spring into action at the first sign of danger. Emma reached out and placed her hand on his warm fur, and immediately the images in her head became clearer. She saw a laboratory underground, filled with rows of cages containing dogs of all sizes. Scientists moved between them, making notes on clipboards and injecting the animals with glowing blue liquid. The dogs' eyes would change after the injections, becoming more alert, more human-like. Some dogs would start walking on their hind legs. Others would begin to understand human speech perfectly. They were trying to make super dogs, Emma whispered to herself, her eyes wide open in the darkness. Dogs that could think like people. The worst part was what came next. The dogs who showed the most intelligence were forced to fight each other. Not just playing or wrestling, but real fighting where the losers were taken. He away and never came back. Max had been one of the smartest ones, which meant he'd been forced to do terrible things just to survive. Emma felt tears on her cheeks. "I'm so sorry, Max," she whispered. "I'm so sorry they hurt you." Max opened his eyes and looked at her. In the dim moonlight coming through the window, Emma could see him clearly. He placed his large paw on her small hand, and suddenly her mind was filled with new images. But these were different. These were memories of love. She saw a young soldier in army fatigues, probably not much older than 20. He had kind eyes and a gentle smile. This was Jake, Max's first real family. Jake would throw tennis balls for Max in a backyard, scratch behind his ears while watching TV, and share his dinner when he thought nobody was looking. "Jake loved you so much," Emma said, and Max's tail wagged slightly. "He didn't want to leave you." The images shifted, showing Jake getting ready to deploy overseas. He was packing his bags while Max sat nearby, sensing that something was wrong. Jake knelt down and hugged Max tight, whispering promises to come back soon. That was the last time they saw each other. Emma learned that Jake had been killed in action 6 months into his deployment, but Max didn't know that. He kept waiting for Jake to come home, visiting all the places they used to go together. The phone booth was where Jake used to call his girlfriend, and Max had heard Jake's voice from inside many times. "You thought he might call you from there," Emma realized. "You thought if you waited long enough, you'd hear his voice again." Max pressed his nose against Emma's cheek, and she felt his sadness like a weight in her chest. But there was something else too, a warm feeling that she recognized as gratitude. Max was grateful to finally have someone who understood. The next morning, Emma woke up to find Max standing at the bedroom window, growling softly. She joined him and peered outside. The same black sedan from yesterday was parked across the street, and this time she could see 2 men inside. They were watching their apartment building. "Mommy!" Emma called, running to the kitchen where Sarah was making coffee. "The bad people are here." Sarah looked out the window and felt her blood run cold. The men in the sedan weren't even trying to hide anymore. One of them was talking on a phone, while the other held what looked like a tablet computer. "Emma, pack your backpack with some clothes," Sarah said, trying to keep her voice calm. "We're going to visit Dr. Martinez." Dr. Martinez was the veterinarian who lived 2 blocks away. Sarah had called her the night before, and she'd agreed to examine Max that morning. But now, Sarah realized they might need more than just a medical checkup. They might need help. Max seemed to sense the danger too. He stayed close to Emma, his ears constantly moving as he listened for threats. When they left the apartment building through the back exit, Max led the way, checking each corner before allowing them to continue. Dr. Martinez's clinic was in the basement of her home, a cozy space filled with medical equipment and the smell of antiseptic. She was a small woman in her 50s with graying hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "So, this is the dog you found," she said, kneeling down to examine Max. "He's beautiful, but he's definitely been through something traumatic." As Dr. Martinez checked Max's vital signs, Emma sat nearby, her hand resting on his head. The images started flowing again, but this time they were recent memories. She saw the laboratory from Max's perspective, the day he escaped. "Dr. Martinez," Emma said suddenly, "do you know what a microchip looks like?" "Of course, honey. We use them to identify pets. Why?" "Max has one, but it's not like normal pet chips. It's bigger, and it has wires coming out of it." Dr. Martinez looked puzzled. "That's not possible, Emma. Microchips are tiny, smaller than a grain of rice." But when she ran her scanner over Max's neck, her expression changed. The scanner was beeping frantically, and the display showed numbers and letters that made no sense. "Sarah," Dr. Martinez said quietly, "we need to talk privately." They stepped into the next room, leaving Emma with Max. Dr. Martinez's face was grave. "That's not a regular pet microchip. It's some kind of tracking device, and it's been surgically implanted. The signal is encrypted, military grade." "What does that mean?" Sarah asked, though she was afraid she already knew. "It means someone spent a lot of money to make sure they could always find this dog, and it means they're probably tracking him right now." Sarah felt sick. "We have to remove it. I can't do that here. The surgery would be too complex, and if something goes wrong..." Dr. Martinez shook her head. "We need to get him to a proper animal hospital." They returned to the examination room to find Emma sitting perfectly still, her eyes closed and her hand on Max's head. Max was also motionless, but his ears were twitching rapidly. "Emma, what are you doing?" Sarah asked. "Listening," Emma replied without opening her eyes. "Max is showing me where the other dogs are." "What other dogs?" Emma's eyes snapped open, and she looked terrified. "The ones who are still trapped. There are dozens of them, Mommy. They're in a place underground, and they're scared." Dr. Martinez knelt down beside Emma. "Sweetheart, can you tell me more about this place? What does it look like?" "It's like a maze made of concrete. There are numbers on the walls and men in white coats who carry electric sticks." Emma's voice was shaking. "Some of the dogs are so smart now that they can understand everything the men say. They know what's going to happen to them." "What's going to happen to them?" Sarah asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. "They're going to be sold to people who want to use them for bad things. Guard dogs that never sleep, fighting dogs that can't feel pain, hunting dogs that can track people across whole cities." Emma looked at Max with tears in her eyes. "Max was supposed to be sold too, but he escaped during a transfer." Dr. Martinez stood up slowly. "Sarah, I think we need to call the police." "No," Emma said quickly. "The police won't believe us, and some of them might be working with the bad people. Max remembers seeing police uniforms in the laboratory." Before anyone could respond, Max suddenly stood up and ran to the window. He was growling, a deep, dangerous sound that made the hair on Sarah's arms stand up. Outside, the black sedan had found them. "Back door," Dr. Martinez said urgently. "There's an alley behind the building." But as they reached the back exit, they could see another car blocking the alley. They were trapped. "Emma," Sarah said, trying to keep her voice steady, "I need you to stay very close to me, okay?" Emma nodded, but she was looking at Max with a strange expression. "Max wants to protect us," she said, "but he doesn't want to hurt anyone unless he has to." The front door of the clinic opened, and two men in dark suits entered. They were both tall and muscular, with the kind of cold eyes that Sarah had only seen in movies. One of them was holding a tablet that was beeping steadily. "Dr. Martinez," the first man said politely, "we're here to retrieve our property." "I don't know what you're talking about," Dr. Martinez replied, moving to stand between the men and Emma. "The dog," the second man said, "asset designation K97. It escaped from our facility 3 days ago." Max stepped forward, placing himself in front of Emma. His growl was louder now, and Sarah could see his muscles tensing, but she also noticed something else. His eyes were different. They were more alert, more focused than any normal dog's eyes should be. "That's not a dog," Emma said suddenly. "That's Max. He has a name and he has feelings, and he doesn't want to go back to your horrible place." The first man smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. Little girl, that animal is worth more than your house. It's the result of 3 years of research and development. It's not a pet." "You're wrong," Emma said, her voice stronger now. "Max is my friend, and friends don't let friends get hurt." She placed both hands on Max's head, and something extraordinary happened. Max's eyes began to glow with a soft blue light, the same color as the liquid Emma had seen in her visions. But this wasn't the harsh, artificial glow of the laboratory. This was gentle, warm, like moonlight on water. The two men stepped back, their confident expressions changing to ones of alarm. "How is the girl activating the enhancement protocol?" the first man asked. "That's impossible," the second man replied. "The neural link only responds to our equipment." Emma looked up at the men, with Max's glowing eyes reflected in her own. "Max isn't your property," she said. "He's a living being with his own thoughts and feelings, and he's tired of being treated like a thing." Max let out a howl that was unlike anything Sarah had ever heard. It was pure, powerful, and filled with years of pain and longing. The sound seemed to vibrate through the walls of the clinic, and Sarah could swear she heard other dogs howling in response from somewhere far away. The first man reached for something inside his jacket, but Max was faster. He leaped forward, not to attack, but to knock the man's hand away. The man stumbled backward, and his tablet crashed to the floor. "Emma, run!" Sarah shouted, but Emma didn't move. "No," Emma said calmly. "Max says it's time to stop running. It's time to fight back." The blue glow in Max's eyes grew brighter, and suddenly Sarah could hear something that made her heart race. It was the sound of dogs barking, but not just one or two. It sounded like dozens of them, and they were getting closer. The two men in suits looked at each other with growing panic. "Control, we have a problem," the first man said into a radio. "The subject has somehow accessed the network protocol. We're getting responses from all active assets." "What does that mean?" Dr. Martinez asked. Emma smiled for the first time since the men had entered. "It means Max just called for backup. All the dogs in the laboratory heard him, and they're coming to help." The sound of barking was getting louder, and now Sarah could hear other sounds too. Car alarms, shouting, and what sounded like sirens in the distance. Through the window, she could see people on the street stopping to stare at the sky, as if they were seeing something impossible. "This is impossible," the second man said. "The assets are contained in a facility 50 miles from here." "Not anymore," Emma said. "Max showed them the way out, and now they're coming to find their friend." The first man grabbed his radio again. "Control, we need immediate extraction. The situation is out of control." But before he could say anything else, the front window of the clinic exploded inward. Not from an impact, but from the sheer force of the howl that came from outside. Standing in the street was a pack of dogs unlike anything Sarah had ever seen. They were all different breeds, but they all had the same glowing blue eyes as Max. And they were all looking directly at the two men in suits. "You experimented on us," one of the dogs said, its voice clear and unmistakably human. "You turned us into weapons, but you forgot that weapons can choose their own targets." Sarah felt her legs give out. Dogs were talking. Dogs were talking, and they were angry, and they were here to rescue their friend. The two men ran for the back door, but they found their way blocked by more dogs. These weren't just enhanced animals anymore. They were something new, something that had never existed before. They were creatures with the intelligence of humans and the loyalty of dogs, and they had decided that their days of being victims were over. Emma walked over to the talking dog, a German shepherd that looked similar to Max but with scars across his muzzle. "Hello," she said simply. "I'm Emma. I've been taking care of Max." The dog looked down at her with eyes that held both wisdom and sadness. "Thank you, little one. We have been waiting for someone like you, someone who could hear us, someone who could help us remember what it means to be free." As the pack of enhanced dogs surrounded the two men, Sarah realized that her life had just changed forever. Emma wasn't just a little girl who was good with animals. She was something much more important. She was the bridge between two worlds, the person who could help these magnificent creatures find their way home. But first, they had to deal with the people who had created this situation. And judging by the determined look in the dog's glowing eyes, that reckoning was about to begin. The two men in suits were pressed against the back wall of the clinic, their faces pale with terror. The talking German shepherd stepped closer to them, his glowing eyes never blinking. "Your names are Doctor," Marcus Webb and Agent Johnson, the dog said, tilting his head. You have been hunting us for 72 hours. You killed our handlers when we escaped. You told your superiors that we were just animals that had gone rabid. How do you know that? Dr. Webb stammered. Because we can read your minds now, another dog said from the doorway. This one was a golden retriever with kind eyes that somehow made her words even more terrifying. The enhancement process you developed had side effects you never bothered to study. We don't just think like humans anymore. We can see into human thoughts. Emma looked up at Sarah with wonder. Mommy, they're like me. They can see things that other people can't see. Sarah pulled Emma closer, still trying to process what was happening. These dogs weren't just intelligent. They were something entirely new, something that science had created but couldn't control. Max padded over to Emma and gently pressed his nose against her hand. The moment they touched, Emma's eyes briefly glowed with the same blue light as his. Max says we need to go home, Emma announced, but not to our apartment, to his real home, the place where Jake is buried. That's 3 hours away, Sarah protested, and these men will just follow us. The lead German shepherd turned to look at the two agents. No, they won't. Agent Johnson and Dr. Webb are going to drive back to their facility and tell their superiors that they never found us. They're going to recommend that the entire program be shut down. We can't do that, Agent Johnson said, trying to sound authoritative. You're classified military assets. We have orders to... Your orders don't matter anymore, the golden retriever interrupted. We've been inside your head, Agent Johnson. We know about your daughter. She's 8 years old, loves horses, and her name is Lily. Agent Johnson's face went white. How could you possibly know that? We know everything about you. We know that doctor. Webb has been stealing money from the program to pay for his gambling debts. We know that your facility has been conducting illegal experiments on stolen pets. We know where the bodies are buried. Dr. Martinez, who had been standing frozen in shock, finally found her voice. Bodies? What bodies? The dogs who didn't survive the enhancement process, Max said, speaking for the first time since Emma had known him. His voice was deep and gentle, nothing like the harsh tones of the other enhanced dogs. They told their families that the pets had been killed in accidents, car strikes, poisonings, attacks by wild animals. But the truth is, they died on operating tables while these men tried to turn them into weapons. Sarah felt sick to her stomach. How many? Hundreds, the lead German shepherd replied. Over 3 years, hundreds of dogs were taken from shelters, stolen from yards, or bought from puppy mills. Most of them died during the first round of injections. Only 47 of us survived the full enhancement process. Emma looked around at the pack of dogs surrounding them. She counted 12, including Max. Where are the others? Some escaped to different cities. Some were killed when they tried to resist. Some were sold to buyers before we could save them. The golden retriever's voice was filled with sadness. We are what remains of the Cerberus project. Dr. Webb suddenly lunged for the door, but he was blocked by a massive Rottweiler whose eyes glowed like blue fire. I wouldn't recommend that, the Rottweiler said calmly. We've been very patient with you so far, but our patience has limits. What do you want from us? Agent Johnson asked. Justice? The lead German shepherd replied. But not the kind you're thinking. We don't want revenge. We want the truth to come out. We want the families of the dogs who died to know what really happened to their pets, and we want to make sure this never happens again. Emma stepped forward, her small hand still touching Max's head. They also want to find the people who bought the other dogs. Some of them are being used for bad things. What kind of bad things? Sarah asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. The images flowed through Emma's mind, shared from Max's connection to the other enhanced dogs. She saw guard dogs that never slept being used to protect illegal drug operations. Fighting dogs that couldn't feel pain being forced to battle each other for entertainment. Hunting dogs with superhuman tracking abilities being used to hunt humans who had tried to escape from dangerous people. They're being used by criminals, Emma said quietly. People who paid millions of dollars for dogs that could do impossible things. Dr. Martinez finally stepped forward. If what you're saying is true, then we need to contact the authorities. The real authorities, not these people. The real. Authorities won't believe you. Agent Johnson said with a bitter laugh. Enhanced talking dogs? Mind-reading animals? They'll think you're crazy. Maybe, the golden retriever said, but Emma is going to help us change that. All eyes turned to Emma, who was still glowing faintly with the blue light that seemed to flow between her and Max. What do you mean? Sarah asked. Emma's gift is stronger than ours, Max explained. We can read human thoughts and communicate telepathically with each other, but Emma can do something we can't. She can share our memories with other humans. I don't understand, Sarah said. Emma looked up at her mother with eyes that seemed far too old for her 5-year-old face. I can show people what the dogs remember, Mommy. I can make them see the laboratory, the experiments, everything that happened. They won't just have to believe us, they'll actually see it. The implications of this hit Sarah like a truck. Her daughter wasn't just empathic with animals. She was some kind of bridge between species, capable of sharing consciousness across the barrier that had always separated human and animal minds. How is that possible? Dr. Martinez asked. We don't know, the lead German Shepherd admitted. But when Emma touches one of us, she becomes part of our neural network. For a few moments, she can access all of our shared memories and experiences. And she can pass those memories to other humans, the Rottweiler added. We've never encountered anything like it. Agent Johnson and Dr. Webb had been listening to this conversation with growing alarm. You can't let her do that, Dr. Webb said desperately. The people running this project have resources you can't imagine. If they find out about the girl's abilities, they'll want to experiment on her too, Emma finished. I know, Max showed me. Sarah's protective instincts kicked into overdrive. Nobody is experimenting on my daughter. Which is why we need to move quickly, the golden retriever said. There are news reporters in the city who have been investigating illegal animal testing. If we can get Emma to them, if she can show them what really happened, the story will spread faster than the project leaders can contain it. But first, Max said, looking directly at Emma, we need to go to Jake's grave. There's something there that I need to do before we can move forward. Emma nodded as if this made perfect sense to her. He needs to say goodbye properly. He's been carrying Jake's pain for too long. Sarah looked around at the pack of enhanced dogs, at the 2 terrified government agents, and at her daughter, who was glowing with otherworldly light. A week ago, her biggest worry had been paying the rent on time. Now she was apparently part of some kind of supernatural resistance movement led by talking dogs. Okay, she said, surprising herself. We'll go to Jake's grave, but how do we get there without being followed? Leave that to us, the Rottweiler said with what might have been a smile. We've learned a few tricks during our time in captivity. What happened next was like something out of a movie. The enhanced dogs spread out through the neighborhood, using their telepathic connection to coordinate a plan that was both simple and brilliant. Half of them created a distraction 6 blocks away, leading police and government vehicles on a chase through the city. The other half created a protective escort for Sarah, Emma, and Max. Dr. Martinez offered to drive them, her veterinary van providing cover as they slipped out of the city. Agent Johnson and Dr. Webb were left at the clinic, guarded by 2 of the enhanced dogs who promised to release them unharmed once Emma and Max had completed their mission. As they drove through the countryside, Emma sat in the back of the van with Max's head in her lap. The blue glow had faded from both of their eyes, but Sarah could still feel the connection between them, like an electric current running through the air. Tell me about Jake, Sarah said softly. Emma closed her eyes and smiled. He was 22 when he enlisted. He grew up on a farm with his grandfather, and that's where he met Max. Max was just a puppy then, but he was special even before the experiments. He could find lost animals, predict storms, and sense when people were sick. So Max was already enhanced? Not enhanced, Emma corrected. Just gifted. Some animals are born with abilities that humans don't understand. Jake recognized that Max was different, so he trained him to be a therapy dog for veterans with PTSD. The van hit a bump, and Max lifted his head to look out the window. They were passing through a small town, and Emma could see his excitement building. We're close, she announced. Jake is buried in Riverside Cemetery, under an oak tree by the pond. Dr. Martinez followed Emma's directions through the winding roads of the cemetery until they reached a quiet section overlooking a small body of water. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the headstones. Jake's grave was marked with a simple military headstone. Sergeant Jacob Martinez, age 23, beloved son and soldier. Someone had left fresh flowers recently, probably Jake's family. Max approached the grave slowly, his head low. For the first time since Emma had known him, he looked like a normal dog, just a pet mourning his lost owner. Emma knelt beside him and placed her hand on his neck. Immediately the memories began to flow. But these weren't the harsh, painful memories of the laboratory. These were warm, golden memories of love and friendship. She saw Jake as a young soldier, teaching Max to comfort other veterans who were struggling with nightmares and flashbacks. She saw them playing fetch in army bases around the world. She saw Jake promising Max that they would always be together, no matter what happened. And then she saw Jake's final mission, the one he never came home from. He had been trying to rescue civilians from a bombed building when it collapsed. His last thought before he died had been worry about who would take care of Max. "He's here," Emma whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Jake's here, and he wants to tell Max something." Sarah and Dr. Martinez watched in amazement as a soft golden light began to emanate from Jake's headstone. It wasn't the harsh blue glow of the military enhancements. This was something else entirely, something pure and loving. Max began to whimper and then to howl. But this wasn't the powerful howl that had summoned the other enhanced dogs. This was the cry of a dog who had finally found peace. "Jake says he's sorry," Emma translated, her voice breaking. "He's sorry he couldn't come home. He's sorry Max had to wait so long. But he's proud of what Max has become. He's proud that Max found a way to help other animals who were suffering." The golden light grew brighter, and suddenly Sarah could see him too. A young man in army fatigues kneeling beside Max and stroking his fur. Jake looked exactly like Emma had described him. Kind eyes, gentle smile, and a face full of love for his four-legged friend. "It's time to let go, boy," Jake's voice whispered on the wind. "You've waited long enough. You've suffered enough. Now, it's time to live again." Max's howling gradually faded to a quiet whine, and then to silence. The golden light began to fade as well, but not before Jake looked directly at Emma. "Thank you," he said. "Thank you for giving him hope again." As the light disappeared completely, Max collapsed beside the grave, exhausted. But when he looked up at Emma, his eyes were different. The endless sadness was gone, replaced by something Emma had never seen in them before: peace. "He's ready now," Emma said, wiping her eyes. "He's ready to help the other dogs find their freedom." Dr. Martinez started the van's engine. "Where to now?" Emma looked at Max, who stood up and shook himself like he was shedding years of grief. "Now we go save the others, and we make sure the whole world knows what happened to them." As they drove away from the cemetery, Sarah couldn't help but look back at Jake's grave. The flowers that had been left there were glowing faintly in the moonlight, as if they were blessed by something beyond human understanding. Her daughter had just facilitated a conversation between a living dog and his dead owner, and somehow that was beginning to feel normal. But she knew their journey was far from over. Somewhere out there, dozens of enhanced dogs were still trapped, still suffering, still waiting for someone to set them free. And the people responsible for their pain were not going to give up without a fight. Emma reached over and took her mother's hand. "Don't worry, Mommy. We're going to win. Max showed me how this story ends." "How does it end?" Sarah asked. Emma smiled, and for a moment, her eyes flickered with that familiar blue glow. "With all the dogs going home, and all the bad people learning what it feels like to be caged." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Her little girl was changing, becoming something more than human, and while that should have terrified her, she found herself feeling proud instead. Because sometimes the world needed someone who could bridge the gap between species, someone who could speak for those who had no voice, someone who could turn victims into heroes. Emma was becoming that someone, and Max was going to help her do it. 3 days later, they were hiding in an abandoned farmhouse 40 miles outside the city. Dr. Martinez had contacted her cousin, a journalist named Carlos Rivera, who worked for Channel 7 News. He had been investigating reports of missing pets for months, following leads that kept pointing to the same shadowy government contractors. Emma sat on the porch steps with Max beside her, both of them staring at the horizon. Sarah could see them communicating without words, their connection growing stronger every hour. Sometimes Emma would nod as if responding to something Max had said. Other times, Max would tilt his head and whine softly, as if he were asking her a question. "They're planning something," Dr. Martinez observed, joining Sarah in the kitchen where they were preparing dinner. "I can feel it," Sarah nodded. "Emma's been having dreams. She says the other enhanced dogs are calling to her. They're still trapped in that underground facility, and they're running out of time." "What do you mean, running out of time?" "The people running the project know that Max escaped and connected with Emma. They're planning to move the remaining dogs to a new location where Emma won't be able to find them." Sarah's hands shook as she chopped vegetables. "And they're planning to eliminate any evidence of what they've been doing." Dr. Martinez paled. "You mean they're going to kill the remaining dogs?" "That's what Emma thinks. She says Max can hear their voices getting fainter every day, like they're being drugged or—" Sarah couldn't finish the sentence. Emma appeared in the doorway, her face serious beyond her years. "They're not just going to kill the dogs, Mommy. They're coming for us too." "What do you mean, sweetheart?" "The bad people found out about me. They know I can connect with the enhanced dogs, and they want to study me like they study them." Emma's voice was matter-of-fact, but Sarah could see the fear in her eyes. "Max says they're calling me Asset H-1, the first human enhancement candidate." Sarah dropped her knife and pulled Emma into her arms. "Nobody is going to experiment on you. I won't let them." "I know you won't, Mommy, but they have guns and helicopters and lots of people. We can't fight them alone." "Then what do we do?" Emma pulled back and looked at her mother with eyes that seemed to glow faintly in the dim kitchen light. "We don't fight them. We expose them. Mr. Rivera is coming tonight with his camera crew. I'm going to show the whole world what really happened to those dogs." Carlos Rivera arrived at sunset, bringing with him a cameraman named Pete and a sound technician named Maria. Carlos was a thin man in his 40s with graying hair and tired eyes that had seen too many cover-ups. He set up his equipment in the farmhouse living room while explaining what he needed. "I've been chasing this story for 8 months, he told them. "Missing pets, falsified death certificates, shell companies receiving government contracts for animal research. But I've never had a smoking gun, no proof of what's really been happening." "Emma can give you that proof," Dr. Martinez said. "But you have to be prepared for something that's going to challenge everything you think you know about reality." Carlos looked skeptical. "I've been a journalist for 20 years. I've seen every kind of hoax and conspiracy theory imaginable." "This isn't a conspiracy theory," Emma said quietly. She was sitting on the floor with Max, her hand resting on his head. "This is just people being cruel because they think animals don't matter as much as humans." "Okay, Emma," Carlos said gently, kneeling down to her level. "Can you tell me what you think happened to the missing dogs?" Emma closed her eyes and placed both hands on Max's head. Immediately, the familiar blue glow began to emanate from their connection. But this time, something different happened. The glow spread outward, filling the room with soft light. Carlos gasped as images began to appear in the air around them, like holograms made of light and memory. The first image showed a pristine laboratory with rows of empty cages. Then the cages began to fill with dogs of all breeds and sizes, their eyes wide with confusion and fear. "Oh my God," Maria whispered, her hand flying to her mouth. The images shifted, showing scientists in white coats injecting the dogs with glowing blue serum. Some dogs convulsed and died immediately. Others began to change, their eyes growing brighter, their postures becoming more human-like. Pete's camera was rolling, capturing everything. But Carlos was staring at the holographic memories with the expression of a man whose entire worldview was crumbling. "This is impossible," he breathed. "No," Emma said, her voice echoing strangely in the light-filled room. "This is what happened. These are Max's memories, and the memories of every dog who survived the experiments." The images became more disturbing. Dogs were forced to fight each other while scientists took notes. Others were subjected to psychological torture, their new intelligence used against them, as they were shown images of their former families and told they would never see them again. "Stop," Carlos said, covering his eyes. "I can't watch anymore." But Emma wasn't finished. The final set of images showed the dogs being sold to buyers around the world, criminal organizations, private military contractors, wealthy individuals who wanted living weapons that would never question orders. 47 dogs survived the full enhancement process, Emma said as the images faded. 19 have been sold. 16 are still trapped in the facility. 12 escaped and found each other. And Max found me. The room fell silent except for the soft whirring of Pete's camera. Carlos sat back on his heels, his face pale. "Even if I air this story," he said slowly, "people will think it's special effects, computer-generated imagery. They won't believe it's real." "Yes, they will," Max said, speaking for the first time since the visitors had arrived. "Because Emma can do more than just show memories. She can share abilities." Carlos jumped at the sound of Max's voice. "Did that dog just touch my hand?" Emma said, extending her small palm toward the reporter. "Just for a second." Carlos hesitated, then reached out and brushed his fingers against Emma's. The moment their skin made contact, his eyes widened and began to glow with the same blue light. "I can hear them," he whispered in amazement. "I can hear all of them. The dogs in the facility, the ones who were sold, the ones who died." Tears began streaming down his face. "They're all connected. They're all sharing their pain." Emma pulled her hand back, and the glow faded from Carlos's eyes, but the expression on his face remained changed forever. "Now you know," she said simply. "Now you understand why we have to stop them." Before Carlos could respond, Max suddenly stood up and ran to the window. His ears were flat against his head, and a low growl rumbled in his throat. "They found us," Emma said, her face going pale. "They're here." Through the window, they could see black vehicles moving up the dirt road toward the farmhouse. There were at least 6 of them, and they were moving fast. "How is that possible?" Dr. Martinez asked. "We've been so careful." Emma placed her hand on Max's head, and her expression darkened. "They're tracking Mr. Rivera. They put something in his car when he left the news station." Carlos cursed under his breath. "I should have known they were watching me." "It doesn't matter now," Sarah said, moving to look out the back window. "We need to get out of here." "There's nowhere to run," Pete said, his camera still rolling. "They've got the whole place surrounded." Emma stood up and walked to the center of the room. "Max, call them." "Call who?" Sarah asked. "Everyone," Emma replied. "All the enhanced dogs, all the ones who escaped. Tell them it's time." Max threw back his head and let out a howl that seemed to shake the very foundations of the farmhouse. It was different from any sound he'd made before, deeper, more resonant, carrying emotions and messages that human ears couldn't fully comprehend. Within seconds, howls began to answer from the darkness outside. Not just 1 or 2, but dozens of them, coming from all directions. The black vehicles stopped moving as their occupants realized they were no longer the hunters. "How many of them are out there?" Maria asked, her voice shaking. "All of them," Emma said with a smile. "Every enhanced dog who's still alive just heard Max's call. They're coming from 3 states away." The first of the rescue team emerged from the tree line, the same German shepherd who had confronted the agents at Dr. Martinez's clinic. Behind him came the golden retriever, the Rottweiler, and dogs Emma had never seen before. Some were limping from old injuries. Others bore scars from fights they had been forced to participate in. But all of them had the same glowing blue eyes, and all of them looked absolutely furious. "Attention, government personnel," the lead German shepherd called out, his voice carrying across the farmyard. "You are surrounded by 37 enhanced canines. We are no longer your property. We are no longer your weapons. We are free beings, and we demand justice." Through the windows, they could see armed men in tactical gear getting out of the vehicles. But for the first time, these men looked uncertain. They had been trained to handle human targets, not talking dogs with supernatural abilities. "This is Agent Harrison," a voice called out through a megaphone. "The animals you're harboring are stolen government property. Surrender them immediately, or we will be forced to use deadly force." The golden retriever stepped forward, her voice sweet but deadly serious. "Agent Harrison, we know who you are. We know about your wife Rebecca and your son Michael. We know about the pictures on your desk and the nightmares you've been having since you started working for the Cerberus Project." Harrison's voice faltered on the megaphone. "How could you possibly—" "We can see into human minds, remember?" The Rottweiler interrupted. "We know that half of your team doesn't want to be here. We know that some of you have pets at home, and you're wondering if they could end up like us." Emma walked to the front door and opened it, ignoring her mother's protests. She stepped onto the porch with Max beside her, facing down an army of armed men. "You don't have to do this," she called out to the soldiers. "You can choose to walk away." "We have our orders," Harrison replied, but his voice lacked conviction. "Your orders are to capture enhanced dogs and a little girl for experimentation," the lead German Shepherd said. "Look around you, Agent Harrison. Look at your men's faces. Ask yourself if this is really what you signed up for when you joined the military." Emma could see the uncertainty spreading through the ranks of soldiers. Some of them were lowering their weapons. Others were looking at each other with expressions of doubt and disgust. "These dogs were tortured," Emma said, her young voice carrying clearly in the night air. "They were stolen from families who loved them. They were turned into weapons against their will. And now, you want to do the same thing to me." One of the soldiers, a young man who couldn't have been much older than 20, stepped forward and removed his helmet. "I didn't sign up to hurt kids," he said loudly. "This is wrong." "Stand down, Private Martinez," Harrison ordered. "No, sir," Martinez replied. "I won't be part of this anymore." Two more soldiers followed his example, laying down their weapons and walking away from the vehicles. Then more joined them, until nearly half of Harrison's team had abandoned their posts. "You're making a mistake," Harrison called out desperately. "These animals are dangerous. The girl is an unknown variable. We don't know what she's capable of." "We know exactly what she's capable of," the golden retriever said. "She's capable of love. She's capable of healing. She's capable of showing the world the truth about what you've done." Emma stepped down from the porch and began walking toward the remaining soldiers. Max stayed close beside her, but he wasn't growling anymore. Instead, he looked almost peaceful. "I'm going to touch each of you," Emma announced. "I'm going to show you what these dogs have experienced, and then you can decide for yourselves whether you want to keep following orders." "Stay back!" Harrison shouted, raising his weapon. "I'm warning you." But Emma kept walking, her small hand extended toward the nearest soldier. The moment her fingers brushed against his tactical vest, his eyes began to glow with blue light. The soldier's weapon clattered to the ground as the memories flooded through him. He saw the laboratory through the dog's eyes. He felt their pain, their fear, their desperate hope for rescue. He experienced the moment when each dog realized they would never see their families again. "Dear God," the soldier whispered, falling to his knees. "What have we done?" Emma moved to the next soldier, then the next. Each time she touched someone, they were overwhelmed by the shared memories of the enhanced dogs. One by one, they abandoned their weapons and walked away. Harrison found himself standing alone, surrounded by 37 enhanced dogs and facing a 5-year-old girl who had just converted his entire team to her cause. "It's over," Emma said gently. "The world is going to know the truth now. Mr. Rivera has everything on camera. The story is going to be broadcast tomorrow morning, and all the dogs who are still trapped are going to be set free." Harrison's hand shook as he held his weapon. "You don't understand the bigger picture? There are things at stake here that a child couldn't possibly comprehend." "Like what?" Emma asked. "National security, military superiority, the balance of power between people who hurt animals and people who protect them," Emma interrupted. "That's not very complicated, Mr. Harrison. It's actually pretty simple." Max stepped forward and sat down directly in front of Harrison. "Agent Harrison," he said calmly, "your weapon contains 12 rounds. There are 37 of us, plus Emma, her mother, Dr. Martinez, and the news crew. Even if you fired every bullet, you couldn't stop what's already been set in motion." Harrison looked around at the enhanced dogs surrounding him. Their eyes glowed like stars in the darkness, and their expressions were not angry or vengeful. They looked patient, almost sympathetic. "What happens to me if I surrender?" he asked. "You go home to your family," the golden retriever said. "You tell them you love them. You forget about the Cerberus project, and you help us make sure nothing like this ever happens again." Harrison slowly lowered his weapon. "And if I don't?" Emma walked up to him and gently took his hand. The moment they touched, Harrison's eyes filled with tears as he experienced 3 years of canine suffering in the space of a few seconds. "If you don't," Emma said softly, "you'll spend the rest of your life knowing that you had a chance to do the right thing, and you chose not to." Harrison dropped his weapon and fell to his knees beside Max. "I'm sorry," he whispered, stroking the dog's fur. "I'm so sorry for what we did to you." Max pressed his nose against Harrison's cheek. "We forgive you," he said. "Now help us save the others." As dawn broke over the farmhouse, Carlos Rivera was preparing to broadcast the story that would change everything. His camera had captured not just the enhanced dogs and their abilities, but the moment when an entire military unit chose compassion over orders. Emma sat on the porch steps, surrounded by the dogs who had traveled hundreds of miles to answer Max's call. They were no longer just enhanced animals or escaped weapons. They were a family, united by their shared experience and their hope for a better future. "What happens next?" Sarah asked, sitting down beside her daughter. Emma smiled and scratched behind Max's ears. "Next, we go get the others, the 16 dogs who are still trapped. And then we find the 19 who were sold, and we bring them home too. And after that, we make sure that no animal ever has to go through what these dogs went through. We make sure that people understand that animals have feelings and thoughts and dreams, just like humans do." Sarah looked at her daughter, this 5-year-old girl who had somehow become the leader of a supernatural resistance movement, and felt her heart swell with pride. "You know this is going to change your life forever," she said. "Once this story goes public, you'll never be able to live normally again." Emma leaned against her mother's shoulder and watched the sun rise over the horizon. "I was never meant to live normally, Mommy. I was meant to help them. All of them." Max rested his head on Emma's lap and closed his eyes. For the first time since Jake's death, he felt truly at peace. He had found his purpose again, not as a weapon or a tool, but as a protector and a friend. The nightmare was almost over, but the real work was just beginning. 3 weeks later, Emma and her growing family of enhanced dogs were living in a converted barn on a ranch owned by a retired veterinarian named Dr. Susan Clark. The story had exploded across every news channel, social media platform, and newspaper in the world. Carlos Rivera's footage of talking dogs, holographic memories, and a 5-year-old girl converting an entire military unit had become the most watched news segment in history. But the people behind the Cerberus project hadn't given up. They had simply gone underground, moving their operations to a new facility that Emma couldn't locate through her connection with the rescued dogs. The 16 enhanced dogs still trapped there had been sedated so heavily that their telepathic signals had gone silent. "We're running out of time," Emma told Sarah one morning as they fed the 37 dogs now living on the ranch. "I can barely hear them anymore. It's like they're fading away." Sarah watched her daughter, who had grown thinner and more serious over the past weeks. The constant mental connection with so many enhanced dogs was taking a toll on Emma's small body. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and sometimes she would stare off into space for minutes at a time, lost in shared memories and emotions. "Maybe you need to take a break, sweetheart," Sarah suggested. "Let the authorities handle the search for the facility." Emma shook her head firmly. "The authorities are trying, but the bad people are too smart. They're moving the dogs again tonight, to a place where I'll never be able to find them." "How do you know that?" "Because one of the trapped dogs woke up for just a few seconds yesterday. Her name is Luna, and she's a border collie. She told me they're going to put all the remaining dogs on an airplane and fly them somewhere far away." Emma's voice broke. "She said goodbye to me, Mommy. She said goodbye because she doesn't think she'll ever see freedom." Max patted over and pressed his nose against Emma's hand. Through their connection, he shared what he had learned from his network of enhanced dogs scattered across the country. "The other dogs who were sold are being moved too," Emma translated. "The people who bought them are scared because of the news stories. They're planning to get rid of the evidence." Sarah's heart clenched. "You mean they're going to kill them?" Emma nodded, tears streaming down her face. 19 dogs are going to die because people are afraid of getting in trouble, and 16 more are going to disappear forever. Max says we have to do something tonight, or it will be too late." Dr. Clark, who had been listening from the barn doorway, stepped forward. "Emma, you've already done more than anyone could have asked. You've exposed the truth, you've saved dozens of dogs, and you've changed how the world thinks about animal intelligence. You don't have to save everyone." "Yes, I do," Emma said with quiet determination. "That's what Jake would have done. That's what Max would do if he could. And that's what I'm going to do." That afternoon, Emma sat in the middle of the barn with all 37 enhanced dogs arranged in a circle around her. She placed her hands on Max's head and closed her eyes, sending her consciousness out through the network of connected minds. For the first time, she tried to reach beyond the enhanced dogs to the ordinary animals around the world. If her power was growing stronger, maybe she could communicate with more than just the laboratory-created beings. The response was overwhelming. Suddenly, Emma's mind was flooded with voices from every direction. Dogs in animal shelters, cats in rescue centers, horses in stables, even wild animals in forests and fields. They were all calling out, sharing their experiences of human cruelty and kindness, their fears and hopes. "There are so many of them," Emma gasped, her body shaking from the effort of maintaining so many connections. "Animals everywhere who need help." "Emma, you need to stop," Sarah said urgently. "This is too much for you." But Emma pushed deeper into the network of animal consciousness. She could sense the 16 trapped enhanced dogs now, their minds clouded by drugs, but still fighting to stay awake. She could feel the 19 sold dogs, scattered across the globe, but all experiencing the same terror as their owners, prepared to eliminate them. And then she felt something else. Something that made her eyes snap open in shock. "There are more," she whispered. "Not just dogs. They've been experimenting on other animals too. Cats, wolves, even dolphins. There's a whole underwater facility where they're trying to create enhanced marine animals." Max's growl rumbled through the barn. Through Emma, he could see what she was seeing. Laboratories around the world, all connected to the same shadowy organization, all continuing the work that had created him and his pack. "How many?" Dr. Clark asked, her face pale. "Hundreds," Emma replied. "Maybe thousands. They've been doing this for years, in different countries, using different species. The dog program was just the beginning." Sarah knelt beside her daughter and took her hands. "Emma, this is bigger than we thought. This isn't something one little girl can handle alone." "I'm not alone," Emma said, looking around at the enhanced dogs surrounding her. "And I'm not just one little girl anymore." As she spoke, the blue glow began to emanate from her eyes again. But this time, it was different. Instead of the soft light they had seen before, this was brilliant and powerful, filling the entire barn with radiance. "I can feel them all," Emma said, her voice echoing strangely. "Every enhanced animal on the planet, every ordinary animal who's been hurt by humans, every creature who's crying out for help." The glow spread from Emma to the dogs around her, then outward through the walls of the barn. Sarah could see it expanding across the landscape like a wave of light, reaching out to touch every living thing in its path. "What's happening?" Dr. Clark asked in amazement. "She's creating a global network," Max explained, his own voice filled with awe. "She's connecting every animal consciousness on Earth. They're all becoming part of the same family." Emma stood up slowly, her small body radiating power that seemed impossible for someone her size. "Tonight, every enhanced animal who's still trapped will hear my voice, and every ordinary animal will help them escape." "How?" Sarah asked. Emma smiled, and for a moment, she looked like her old 5-year-old self again. "You'll see, Mommy, animals are much smarter and braver than people think. They just needed someone to help them organize." That night, at exactly midnight, Emma sat in the barn, surrounded by her pack of enhanced dogs. She placed both hands on Max's head and sent out a call that traveled instantly across the globe. The response was immediate and extraordinary. In laboratories around the world, ordinary lab rats began chewing through power cables, causing electrical failures. Security dogs that were supposed to guard facilities suddenly turned on their handlers, not to attack them, but to herd them away from danger. Birds began setting off motion sensors and alarms in perfect coordination, creating chaos and confusion. In the underwater facility that Emma had discovered, dolphins began using their sonar in harmony, creating sound waves that shattered the glass walls of their tanks. The enhanced marine animals swam to freedom, while their ordinary cousins distracted the human researchers. "It's working," Emma breathed, her consciousness split between dozens of locations simultaneously. The animals are rescuing each other. Through her network, she could see the 16 trapped dogs waking up as power failures disabled their sedation systems. Luna, the border collie, was leading them through corridors filled with smoke from overloaded electrical systems. Ordinary lab animals were showing them the way to exits that only creatures low to the ground could navigate. Around the world, the 19 sold enhanced dogs were being rescued by coordinated efforts from local animal populations. In one city, a pack of stray dogs surrounded a criminal's compound, howling in unison until police came to investigate. In another country, cats triggered car alarms throughout a neighborhood, drawing attention to a house where an enhanced dog was being held captive. "The humans are fighting back," Max reported, his ears twitching as he processed information from the network. "They're trying to recapture the escaping animals." Emma's glow intensified. "Then we'll fight back harder." Suddenly, every domestic animal in every city began to act in perfect coordination. Dogs started barking at the same moment, creating a cacophony that could be heard for miles. Cats knocked over garbage cans and triggered car alarms. Birds dove at windows and set off building security systems. The message was clear. The animals of the world were no longer going to be silent victims. In the main Cerberus laboratory, Dr. Webb and the remaining project leaders watched in horror as their life's work crumbled around them. Emergency systems were failing, animals were escaping, and every attempt to contact their satellite facilities was met with busy signals or no response. "How is this possible?" Dr. Webb shouted over the sound of alarms. "It's just one little girl." "No," said a familiar voice from the doorway. It was Luna, the border collie, leading the 16 escaped enhanced dogs into the control room. "It's all of us." The freed dogs surrounded the terrified scientists, but they didn't attack. Instead, they simply stood there, their glowing blue eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and determination. "For 3 years, you treated us like objects," Luna said, her voice clear and strong. "You stole us from families who loved us. You tortured us in the name of science. You turned us into weapons." "But we're not weapons anymore," added another dog, a German short-haired pointer named Atlas. "We're free beings, and we choose to forgive you." Dr. Webb collapsed into a chair, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what was happening. "What do you want from us?" "We want you to stop," Luna replied simply. "Stop the experiments, stop the torture, stop treating animals like they're less important than humans." Emma's voice echoed through the laboratory's speaker system, transmitted through her global network. "Dr. Webb, this is Emma, the little girl you wanted to experiment on." Webb looked around frantically for the source of the voice. "Where are you?" "I'm everywhere," Emma replied. "I'm connected to every animal on Earth now. They're all my family, and they're all under my protection." Through the network, Emma could see Webb's terrified face on the laboratory's security cameras. "You have a choice, Doctor. Webb, you can help us shut down all the enhancement programs peacefully, or the animals will shut them down for you." "You're just a child," Webb protested. "You can't possibly understand the implications of what you're doing." "I understand that you've been hurting innocent creatures for your own selfish purposes," Emma replied, "and I understand that it stops now." As if to emphasize her point, every animal within 100 miles of the laboratory began to converge on the facility. Wild deer emerged from forests, flocks of birds darkened the sky, and domestic animals broke free from their homes to join the march. The sight was both beautiful and terrifying. Thousands of creatures of all species moving together with a single purpose. Back at the ranch, Emma's physical body was growing weaker as she maintained her global network. Sarah held her daughter's hand, feeling how cold and fragile she had become. "Emma, you're pushing yourself too hard," Sarah whispered. "You need to rest." "Almost done, Mommy," Emma replied without opening her eyes. "The last laboratory is surrendering now. All the enhanced animals are free." Through her connection, Emma watched as Dr. Webb and his team laid down their equipment and walked out of the laboratory with their hands raised. The building was quickly surrounded by news crews, police, and animal rights activists who had been alerted by the global network. One by one, the other facilities around the world followed suit. Faced with coordinated animal uprisings and overwhelming media attention, the enhancement programs shut down completely. As the sun rose on a new day, Emma finally opened her eyes and smiled at her mother. The blue glow faded from her gaze, but something had changed permanently. She looked older, wiser, and somehow more connected to the world around her. "It's over," she said softly. "All the enhanced animals are free. All the programs are shut down. And now every animal on Earth knows that they have a voice." Max nuzzled against Emma's cheek, his own eyes bright with joy and gratitude. "What happens now?" he asked. Emma looked around at the 37 dogs who had started this journey with her, then out at the ranch where dozens of other rescued animals were now living in peace. "Now we build something better," she said. "We build a world where animals and humans work together, where no creature is ever treated as less important than another, and where everyone remembers that we're all part of the same family." Sarah hugged her daughter tight, marveling at the extraordinary being she had become. "And how do we do that?" Emma grinned, and for a moment, she looked like a normal 5-year-old again. "One animal at a time, Mommy. One friend at a time, one heart at a time." As animals around the world began to return to their normal lives, they carried with them something they had never possessed before: the knowledge that they were not alone, that they had a protector, and that their voices mattered. The little girl who had seen a dog in a phone booth had become something unprecedented in human history. She had become the bridge between species, the voice for the voiceless, and the guardian of every creature on Earth. And she was just getting started. The story you just listened to is true in the hearts of everyone who believes that animals deserve love, respect, and protection. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment below where you're watching from. Together, we can be the voice for those who cannot speak for themselves.